So here's the finished base unit, I think we've seen that before, and here's the finished ship that we've got. As you can see, we've done a little bit of shaping to it, put a little bit of paint on it, and you'll notice we've cut this little notches in here to thin this section out. The reason being, we're putting a crank in there, and we don't want that crank to catch, so we have a few notches. Now, in order to make the crank, what we need to do is decide how far up and down we want this thing to go, and where the crank position is going to be. Now, at the bottommost position, we probably want it about that far. So having decided you want it about that far, just put a little mark on, and that's the bottom position of it. When we move it up, say we want it to go up about there, and again put a little mark on it. Now, between those two marks is about 1.5 centimetres. Okay, so we'll call it, say, 1.6. It makes it a bit easier. And in the middle of that, we can mark where we're going to drill our hole for the crank to come out. And the little crank will come out there, and that's where we'll turn it, and it'll move up and down about 1.5 centimetres. The crank is going to be, in that case, half of the distance we want it to move up and down. Obviously, when the crank's at top dead centre, that's one point, bottom dead centre is the other point. It's going to be 1.6 centimetres, so the half is going to be at 0.8 centimetres. So when we make our crank, the throw of the crank is going to be 0.8 centimetres. In order to make the crank, I have this. It's a bit of 2mm thick mild steel bar used as axles. You can bind it if you want to. You can also use thin coat hanger wire, basically anything that's stiff enough that will take a bend and keep that bend. Now, we don't have to make the crank very thick, because obviously we only got that thickness of timber to go through, but you're going to find it difficult to get it through there if you bend it all the way. So what I do is put a bend in it, a little U-bend like that, so I know how it's going to be, and then straighten the bend out a little bit so that I can actually get it on. And feed it on. There we go. So now our crank is fed on, and then close that bend up a little bit and just check that it actually goes over like that. Okay, as we said before, we want the crank to be 0.8. You're never going to measure it 0.8, so just somewhere roughly is where you want it to be, and you can get that in there. There we go. Bend it up at 90 degrees. Okay, same again the other side. Bending it out to 90 degrees. Going to make sure those two cranks are in line with each other. Again, it's not wonderful science, so it doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, but there you go. Okay, and there's our crank. So as we turn that, that will go up and down quite nicely. Okay, leave them straight for now. What we're going to do now is take that and drill our crank hole through. Now remember, my crank is 2mm, so the hole I'm going to drill is 2mm. Drill it to whatever you make. Coat hanger wire, I think, is about 3-4mm. Just whatever you have lying around and whatever you've got available to you, drill it appropriately. When you drill that, drill it all the way through into the back block, and drill it in the back block. You don't have to drill it all the way through. You can just stop somewhere in there, because what we're going to do is feed that into there. But make sure that you drill straight and through this block and into the back block. Okay, so you remember that when we made this previously, I told you not to fix this section to here by gluing it. The reason is we want to be able to lift it off. Okay, so I've drilled through my hole. You drill right the way through so you get them in line. I've drilled through my hole, removed it, and there's the hole following it through there. Okay, this then goes into that hole. Now, as you turn that handle, that ship will ride up and down, and you see what it's doing. It's rocking backwards and forwards on the guide pins. Okay, and that's what part of what gets its rocking motion. These pins, which are actually help the front face stand off, are acting as guide pins at the moment, and it's acting just like a piston that would act in your car. If those guide pins that you put in aren't near enough, the thing will slop around too far. It's not really a problem. You can put some more guide pins in. So when you put this thing down there, in a sec, you put this thing down there, and as you turn it, if you find it's just rocking too much, then just mark it and put in 2 more little guide pins to help it rock in the right place. Okay, so it's going to rock wherever you put those guide pins. Don't put them too tight, because if you put them on too tight, it won't make it rock, it'll actually lock it in place, right? And you want it to rock. So a little bit of looseness between your guide pins. And as I say, on this one, because these standoffs are near enough to act as guide pins, I don't need to put guide pins in, so I'm not going to. Okay, so there's it finished. I've put the faceplate back on. Remember, I left this bar straight, again, so it could easily feed in through. After I've fed it in through, you could fix these by putting a bit of glue on them so they don't come off. Then you bend the crank over and bend a little handle in it. You can see that, there you go. Okay, and then as I turn my crank, the ship rocks at sea in front of some cliffs. Okay, and that's it. You can dress up the handle a little bit if you like. Beads work quite nicely, especially with something this thin. You can just get some fancy beads, slip on a long one, glue on a little round one, and then it works nicely to turn the thing with the beads. Anyway, hope you enjoy making this one.